Hey, what is up, mortals? It is SBurkeVA here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 18 of What If Deku Was the Shield Hero. I just wanted to greet you guys by saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat. And so, we begin. I don't like this. Ren let out a long, annoyed sigh as he knew what Itsuki was talking about without having to look. Right now, the two of them were outside of the stadium, enjoying the festival atmosphere, as well as trying to talk with some of the pros that were around. All the two had gotten several offers already for future work studies with some pretty high-ranking pros after the USJ incident. It never hurt to keep an eye open for other potential offers. Perhaps they could run into one of the top heroes in the country and see if they would be willing to extend an offer as well. After all, wasn't one of the first years related to the number 2 hero? For a moment, Ren stayed quiet as he tried his best to enjoy his food. Hopefully, Itsuki would drop it. He was, sadly, out of luck. What were they thinking allowing him to compete like this? Itsuki, just drop it. The bow hero turned to his classmate, a look of distraught in his eyes. How can you say that? Doesn't it bother you to know that we have a villain in our school? Justice needs to be dealt upon him. Itsuki then turned with his bow in hand as he began heading towards one of the student entrances for the stadium with one of the large screens displaying the festival right above it. Yet, before he could get too far, Ren reached out, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. At first, the bow hero looked surprised by this, but soon began glaring at the sword wielder in disgust. I'm keeping you from doing something stupid, like that stunt you and that fool Motoyasu did. How did you think that would turn out? That the two of you would be praised for attacking a student right at the entrance of the school? Itsuki stared at Ren for a moment, the words stumbling out of his mouth being nothing more than an incoherent mess. Ren knew just how much that incident had cost his teammate, losing one of his precious 3 chances to showcase what he could do before the world, hampering his work study and the cleanup he would have to do after today's event, as well as the next day and the day after that. After another moment or two of this, Ren let Itsuki go. If you want to go and deal your idea of justice, then I won't stop you. But don't be surprised if it ends up costing you far more than just cleaning up a stadium all by yourself. I heard that Motoyasu almost lost his provisional license and came close to being expelled for attacking Midoriya the way he did. He's lucky to have to pay for the windows he broke, and will have to sit out his last internship to have special lessons with Principal Nezu. Something tells me that Nezu might not be so lenient if Midoriya gets attacked during the sports festival where the whole world will be watching, especially when he's done nothing obviously wrong. Itsuki looked Ren dead in the eyes with a look that screamed he had found his voice. It's not right. Nezu is not listening to reason. It doesn't matter why he did it. Midoriya attacked Multi, who's practically a civilian compared to people with our level of training. That's the difference between us. Villains like that need to be dealt with, but did that happen? No! He gets to walk around the school as if nothing happened with nothing hanging over his head. Us? We attack him to keep him out of school like what should have happened to him, and we get punished. Ren just let out a sigh, his eyes moving towards one of the nearby outdoor screens attached to the stadium. On it, he could see Midoriya clear as day as he walked back with that brown-haired girl that Motoyasu liked. While looking at him, Ren, if he was being perfectly honest with himself, didn't feel the same way the others felt. He could understand getting upset or losing your temper, especially at a first year, if only Midoriya would man up and admit to what he had done along with an apology to Multi. I get that it bugs you, but Principal Nezu must have had a good reason for keeping Midoriya here at the school. Maybe he's just following some rule that says he can't put Midoriya in detention or suspend him until the investigation is over. Or there's something else going on. I've heard rumors that Midoriya might be a spy for the people who attacked the USJ. The League of Villains. Perhaps he's keeping him close, hoping to feed him some false information or something that will lead to their capture. Or it could be for something else important. But regardless, the animal is just enforcing the rules. For another moment, Itsuki just stood there before walking away with his back facing the building. Fine, then. But if he is a spy, then it'll be our job to stop him. At the same time, the first years were being given some time for a quick meal break, as well as to get some rest before the final competition of the sports festival began. This also allowed the people in the stands to stretch their legs and visit the numerous food stalls around the stadium. Walking at the back of the pack of students, Izuku had no idea what would be worse for him. The silent glares from everyone within the cafeteria, or going outside and taking the chance that people would start throwing stuff at him again. In the end, he knew that he could sit with the people he knew he could trust and chat with them in order to take his mind off his troubles, or he could just take his meal and eat elsewhere. As Izuku tried to make up his mind, he walked in tow with both Raphtalia and Philo. Philo had been waiting for them at the gate, having been brought there by a staff member after the end of the first round. Those who had no idea who she was, since she was in her human form, just gave her a quick and questioning glance before continuing to move on. When she had spotted Izuku, whatever patience she had flew out the window as she rushed over to him and gave the green-haired boy a big hug. Now, as they all walked together, the filial girl was practically bouncing with each step as they walked, beaming happily at Izuku, with excitement in her eyes.
Master, you were so wonderful out there.
What about me? What do you think about how I did?
I suppose you did all right. But just know that I helped out Master far better than you did.
Hey, that's not nice.
No fighting, please.
Izuku felt his shoulders slump as he watched the two give the other a heated look before quickly looking away. The young man brought a hand to his face, his eyes becoming half-lidded as an exasperated look took over his face. This had been going on for a bit, with Raphtalia and Philo fighting over the littlest of things like they were competing with each other. What they were competing for, he had no idea, because Izuku was a dunce. All he knew was, right now, it was another thing he had to worry about on his already large list of issues. By the time Izuku began to lower his head from his face, the students were already splitting up from the group as they began making their way down various hallways. Some took off at a quickened pace down the path that would bring them to the cafeteria, while others, especially those who had been knocked out from the rest of the festival, decided to get some comfort food outside. There were even those who were heading back to places like the locker room, or who just wanted to wander around the stadium for a bit. One of those people was Uraraka, who wanted to find a quiet place for a bit so that she could call her parents. Seeing that both Kirishima and Sue were heading to the cafeteria, Izuku thought that talking to more of his friends might help him feel a bit more at ease. He just hoped that Philo wouldn't eat everything there, as the girl's stomach was practically a bottomless pit. Very soon, it felt like it was just Izuku's group in the hallway as their steps seemed to echo through the deserted corridor. That is, however, until they reached the halfway point where a fiery light could be seen coming out of an adjacent hallway. For a moment, the group paused collectively, thinking that a fire might have been started. That was until they heard a voice that was familiar to everyone except Philo, one that they had all heard at one point or another from the news, or a talk show. "You were pathetic in that last round. You just stood, carrying that purple-haired child on your shoulders, Shoto." As the voice roared loudly, flames could be seen spilling out along the edges of the walls and ceiling before quickly receding like waves of the ocean. Slowly, the group quietly moved toward the entrance to the hallway before peeking around a corner. There they all saw Todoroki standing before a man who towered over him with a flaming beard and eyes so cold that they chilled the soul, ironically. All of them, except Philo, knew who this person was. Endeavor, the number 2 hero in Japan, and Todoroki's father. I don't know what happened. One moment that kid from General Studies was talking to me, and the next moment the round was over. I think he might have used his quirk on me. Todoroki's voice was filled to the brim with defiance as he stared up at his father, hands clenched into fists. But there was more to it, as all the heroes in training could see that their classmate's body was tense, as if he was expecting a more physical fight to break out at any moment. "So you fell under the influence of someone else's quirk before the match even began? That's even more disgraceful." That stirred up something within Todoroki, as when he spoke next, there was a thick amount of hatred in his voice. "You're calling me disgraceful? After everything you've done to our family? After all the years I suffered under your abuse, which you called training? What you drove Mom into doing? Because it looked too much like your own face? You dare call me disgraceful?" Izuku watched in horror as when Todoroki spoke about his mother, he pointed to the scar on his face. Around him he could feel others tense as Kirishima's fingers dug into the wall, or Raphtalia's tail stood up with the fur on it standing on end. Even Sue showed one of her rare facial changes to express how horrified she was. While none of them had confided with each other, they had all at one point or another wondered how Todoroki had gotten that scar on his face. Now they had some sort of idea, which was not sitting well with any of them. made all the worse as Endeavor just stood there, arms crossed against his chest as he looked down at his son with callous eyes. Then, when the man finally spoke, he did so in a manner that seemed to disregard everything his son had told him as if it was beneath his notice. Shoto, I did not come here just to chastise you for the last round. Frankly, I find your entire performance at this festival has been subpar, far below what I could even consider passable. This is your chance to show the world that my greatest creation can exceed that fool All Might. When will you cease this childish rebellion of yours and use your other side? As Endeavor spoke, a wave of sickening unease swept over Izuku, and as the number 2 hero finished speaking, Izuku couldn't take it anymore. He began to move, ready to go out there and defend his classmate. He could also tell that Kirishima wanted to do the same if the sound of the redhead's hardening was any indication. However, before either of them could move, a hand took hold of both boys' wrists. Turning, they saw that it was Sue who was shaking her head at them before gesturing that they should move on. With great reluctance, the group complied.
Sorry, but there's not a lot we can do in a situation like this, Ribbit. I know it's not a pleasant thought.
She's right. Even if we confronted Endeavor, I doubt that it would amount to anything.
Damn it! I just want to punch him so hard in the face for what he said. Instead, I'm running away with my tail tucked between my legs. Not manly at all. Then it's a good thing we're walking away. I'm pretty sure we'd all get in trouble for causing a scene at the sports festival. Especially now after they had to ramp up security, Ribbit. Not getting to compete in the final round would be the least of our worries. I know it might not sound like much, but we could at least tell a teacher about what we overheard.
Sue's right. I'm not sure what they would be able to do, but at least they would be aware that something was going on in the Todoroki family. Maybe we could tell Midnight? I'm sure she could try to discreetly extend a hand to Todoroki.
While Kirishima looked doubtful that someone like Midnight could do anything discreetly given her costume choices over the years, Izuku lowered his head in shame. As much as he wanted to protest against what Sue was saying, he knew deep down that she was right. That there really wasn't much a bunch of first-year students could do right now. And he hated the fact that there was nothing he could do. He hated the idea of knowing someone, whether he knew them or not, was going through something horrible and having no idea how to help himself. Was there anything he could say to Todoroki? Anything he could do? The only real comfort he got was that if they talked to the teachers, perhaps he could learn how to handle these situations better in the future.
Master, what did that man mean when he said that boy was his creation? He's supposed to be his dad, right?
The group tensed at Philo's innocent question. A look was shared that said they all had an idea what the pro-hero meant. And just thinking about it, knowing what they now knew, was enough for bile to rise up in Izuku's throat.
Well, I don't know for certain, but I think it has to do with something called quirk marriages. Basically, someone would seek out a partner who had a specific quirk they wanted in the family, so they would have children with stronger quirks. Quirks that had facets that complemented each other.
After saying this, Izuku bit his lower lip as he began to wonder just how many times Endeavor had children with the mother of his classmate. And just how many of them failed to meet that man's standards. Luckily, what meets our standards is ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN allows you to change your IP address, making it harder to track and securing your privacy. In addition to providing safe passage through the web, you can also expand the reach of your favorite streaming services like Disney+. If you're from the United States, you won't be able to watch any of the MCU and Sony Spider-Man movies. But by switching your location to Japan, you can access them whenever you want. Check out the link in the description to get 3 extra months when you purchase the 12-month subscription plan that costs $99.99. This deal is for a limited time, and thanks to ExpressVPN for sponsoring this video. Now back to failing standards. After getting their food from the cafeteria, it was suggested that they head out to the Flolial stable and eat there instead. Kirishima, the one who had brought up the idea, was eager to show off his dragon, with Sue agreeing, saying it would be nice to get a change of scenery. Izuku, however, had a feeling there was more to it. Only he didn't know if they just felt uncomfortable eating in the same room as Todoroki after accidentally listening in on his conversation with his father, or the fact that ever since they entered the room, most of the people there were shooting heated glares at the green-haired youth. Heck, it might even have been a combination of everything. Still, Izuku agreed, grateful to be out of there. With their food boxed up, the group made their way to the stables. While they would have to go outside to get to where the food stands were, They wouldn't actually have to walk through the area at all. At best, they would be moving along the outer edge of the crowd. When they got there, the group was met with an odd sight. There, jumping up and down while trying to reach the ledge of one of the windows, was a girl with long blue hair that was tied on both sides of her head. Each time she landed, mud would splatter on her shoes and dress, which even people like Izuku and Kirishima could tell was really expensive. But that didn't seem to matter to the girl as she just continued to jump.
Can we help you?
Surprised by the voice, the girl nearly stumbled to the ground, and the mud right below her, only to be stopped as she landed on Izuku's airstrike shield, and Sue's tongue, which was wrapped around her waist. Once she was back on her feet, and the two heroes in training had deactivated their quirks, the girl turned to smile at them.
Thank you very much, heroes.
Izuku smiled at her, and with a very polite tone, Sue, being the class rep, stepped forward and started speaking.
Well, technically we're not heroes yet, Ribbit. Not full ones, anyway. But you know you shouldn't be here, right?
The girl looked embarrassed, and she switched her attention away from Sue and looked at the rest of the students, one by one. Then, when her eyes fell upon Izuku's shield, she let out a gasp before rushing towards him.
You're Izuku Midoriya, the hero with the legendary shield quirk. The hero with that amazing Philolial. Please excuse my behavior, my name is Melty, and I was hoping to get a closer look at your Philolial during the break.
Really? Melty placed her hands on her cheeks and she began to gush.
Yes! In truth, I love all Philolials. They're simply amazing creatures. But when I saw yours, I found it so very hard to stay in my seat. It looked so beautiful that I knew I had to get a closer look. So as soon as the break started, I slipped away from my group to come down here and have a look.
She then turned to look at Izuku, her eyes sparkling.
So if it wouldn't be too much trouble, could I see your Philolial? Maybe even touch it? I brought snacks to... Snack?
Now Philo's eyes had lit up, turning to look at Izuku with a pleading face, with a bit of drool escaping her mouth. While Raphtalia let out a huff and began to chastise Philo, Izuku found himself sweating under the two gazes. He began to wonder if this was how it felt for other heroes when the younger fans asked for their autograph, or when he begged his mother to buy him the most recent All Might action figure. Finally, after giving it some thought, Izuku relented.
All right.
Both Philo and Melty cheered, big smiles on their face. Quickly turning, Philo rushed over to the door to enter the code on a nearby keypad, while Raphtalia moved closer to Izuku so that she could whisper in his ear.
Are you sure that's a good idea, to let her see Philo's Philolial form?
Before answering, Izuku began to scratch the back of his head as he watched the two younger girls head into the stable.
I'd be lying if I said I was 100% okay with it, but I figure it would be better than having Philo transform out where other people might see her. I mean, you saw the way she looked when Melty mentioned snacks. Plus, it might be good for Philo to make friends with people around her age. Or one that looks around her age. But what if she freaks out or... Oh my god! Philo, you're amazing!
Everyone turned to look at the door, spotting Melty running around a now transformed Philo as she ran her hands through the bird's feathers with a massive blush on her face. Seeing that the cat was already out of the bag, the group entered the stable to both eat their meals and watch the two young ones. The rest of their break was honestly one of the more pleasant lunches Izuku had at the school since the Melty incident began. Any worries that Izuku had had about Melty telling anyone else about Philo were quickly dashed as the girl honestly told him that she would never want to do anything that would put Philo in danger. That, as well as liking the fact that she was part of a special group that kept the secret. So the group ate their meals with Kirishima talking about how manly his dragon was already, and all the training he was planning on putting him through. And it got a laugh out of everyone when Philo gave the redhead the stink eye, as she thought it was insulting that he would consider that a dragon could be better than a Philolial. Something that Melty agreed with. Little did they know, however, that while they were in the stables, a certain red-headed girl was staring at the closed door as she bit her thumb.
Damn it. Why is she here today of all days? Did Mother send her here to keep an eye on me?
Melty bit her thumb a bit harder, nearly drawing blood. She had noticed Izuku and his little group from a distance, speaking with a girl near the smelly stables. For a moment, she had thought that she had hit the jackpot, as she planned on causing some more trouble that would have gotten Izuku in trouble. But before she could even come up with the foundation of a plan, she saw who that girl really was.
Daddy told me he wasn't going to make an appearance at the sports festival, so if she's here, then Mother probably sent one of them here to watch her. I'll need to be careful and... What are you doing?
Melty let out a scream of fright, jumping at the calmly asked question. though when she turned around, she barely batted an eye at the head sticking out of the wall before her. The head belonging to a rather annoying hero in Motoyasu's class, Mirio Togata.
Oh, nothing. Just out for a walk, stretching my legs. By the way, what are you doing here?
Mirio smiled brightly at her.
Well, what do you know? Great heads think alike.
Later, after finding out the brackets for the final round of the sports festival and the winding down of the recreational games, Izuku found himself sitting alone in the waiting room going over everything he knew. He was up first, going up against the teen who had possibly been controlling Todoroki, Hitoshi Shinso. Izuku honestly didn't even know if he had been controlling his classmate. But as he thought back to how Todoroki was acting in the last round, and from what the teen had told his father, he was willing to bet it was some sort of mind control. How it was activated, he was left in the dark. His only clue was that, according to the Fire and Ice user, he had been talking to Shinso when his mind went blank, so perhaps there was some sort of verbal component, maybe getting the target to say something specific, responding to a question, or answering a question incorrectly. If that was true, then all Izuku had to do was end the match as quickly as possible, without saying a word. If he could do that, then he would advance to the second round and face Todoroki. Given how powerful Todoroki's quirk was, he didn't think that his opponent, Ibara Shiozaki, stood much of a chance. After that, it would be Ochaku Uraraka against Setsuna Takage. The fourth round would have Kirishima going up against the beast-like man of 1B, Jorota Shishida. Once that was over, Su would be fighting Tokoyami. Ashido's battle would then begin against Shuzo Hananuki. Then would come some of the battles that Izuku was more personally interested in, those being Raftalia versus Togaru Kamakiri, followed by Kachan against the last member of 1B, Pony Sunutori. As Izuku ran down the list of opponents in his mind, going over the ones he knew and how best to defeat them, a hand reached down to touch his shield. So far, he'd done his best to keep his shield usage to a minimum and only using the shields he needed when necessary. For this, he was thankful, since those in the other classes wouldn't know what shields he was capable of producing, while his own classmates would have no idea about his newer ones. Catching them by surprise was his best chance at winning this. Finally, his name was called, and a few moments later, Izuku was walking out onto the field where a fighting arena had been created thanks to Cementos. As he walked out, the cheering of the fans in the stadium began to change into a choir of boos. Izuku grit his teeth as he did his best to walk forward and ignore the noise all around him, as well as what was being thrown at him. The teen could feel a hot dog coated with something wet landing in his messy hair, half-full boxes of popcorn hitting his shoulder, and other assortments of trash. For a split second, Izuku dared to look up at the spot holding the rest of his class, and saw that his friends were cheering him on, forced smiles on their faces as they did their best to raise their voices above the rest of the stadium. The rest of the class, save Kachan, were looking away as if the sight of him right now was too much. As for Kachan, he just sat there watching him with laser focus. Wow. I guess they really don't like you. Izuku said nothing as he looked over at his opponent Shinso. The teen looked every bit as sleep-deprived as Mr. Aizawa. Looking at Izuku with a small smile on his face, he stood there, his half of the arena looking clean, as Izuku's was a growing amount of litter. So, tell me, how does it feel to fall from grace? As soon as he finished saying that, a glass bottle was flung from somewhere in the stand, striking Izuku in the head. Though the shield user's incredible defenses protected him from harm, he still heard the shattering of glass and could feel a liquid running down his side, while Shinso took a step back with eyes filled with panic. Who did that? Midnight's roar caused the stadium to go silent, stopping the showering of trash as the pro hero went over to Izuku to check on him with clear worry in her eyes. As Midnight inspected the area for any cuts and found none, Izuku signaled with his hands that he was fine, physically at least, because emotionally he felt like he was bleeding all over the floor. Izuku Midoriya is fine and able to continue with the match. We will find the person who threw that, and punishment will be given accordingly. And let me make this clear. If anyone does that again, I shall see to it personally that whatever penalty you receive shall be far worse. Am I clear? Then, with a growl still in her voice, Midnight started the match. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before the video ends. Firstly, I'd like to thank our patrons, BD Flames, Ethan Davis, Terry Chills, Shifter Meals, Adam Zagel, Zill, XAV Beat 03, and Joshua Phelps. Secondly, I'd also like to thank all of our YouTube members, Toby Acosta, Rob the King, Sith Lord 906, CF2364, and Knuckles, Rimuo Tempest, Angel Juarez, Donald C. Stewart, Bryant Greer, and Demonized Fox. Thirdly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has you covered. Our We the Celestials My Hero Academia, Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Fourthly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in today's excellent content. Their details can be found in the description below. Lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend an invitation to join the team. The only caveat is that we only accept members who are 16 years old and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. So thank you all for watching, and have a great day.